Thank you, Professor Molteni. Now I'd like to I'll invite to draw the conclusions. It's a very interesting day. Lara Ponti and Letizia Moratti to conclude the seventh edition of the Sustainable Economy Forum. Let's give them a round of applause.
Iniziamo da Lara Ponti.
Let's start with Lara Ponti. Thank you. I will try to sum things up, the things that I will take back home with me uh, from this day. The first thing is, I think that today what came out was sustainable development, transition to production models and consumer models that are now different is already started. It's unstoppable. And it's unstoppable both because we've said it today, but also because many processes have already got underway, and also uh, others are getting underway. And also because the people, the citizens, are asking for this. So in this particular moment, what's happening on the other hand, on the other side of the ocean, that is not necessarily something to be taken for granted. It could be a moment in which a whole series of negative currents are abroad. But no, we're saying something different here. We're also saying that sustainability is a sustainability across the board. And it's a question of balance and equilibrium among different dimensions and also generations, putting people in the center. It safeguards and is a steward for the new generations. In fact, many of the people who took the floor today talked about this. It's a central issue, and we must really look at this. And also there is a focus, a growing focus, and on the environment, which we should in fact be more expeditious about. We heard about the economy, economic, but civilian community that creates social value. These are the people we've heard from today. Sustainability is an opportunity to able to redraw identity and processes, and there are certain drivers which allow for this, and these have been underlined, and they are innovation. We said this from talking from several angles, and in the last panel we said careful that innovation has always been something where we've been ahead, and we can still be ahead. We have said there nothing is to be taken for granted, because prophecies in fact very often can come about. We have skills, we have resources, we have to believe in this, and especially we have to encourage the institutions to back this process. But we have to start with enterprises, businesses. The other side, people, skills, training, young people. We continue to see this, say this. We need young people. We have to give space to young people and trust that they can develop this. We mustn't become a country of old conservatives. This is a real opportunity. We heard this today, both from a practical point of view with practical examples. We gave examples of companies that in sustainability and with sustainability they have created value. And we've heard about new potential. We've heard from scientists and entrepreneurs who say we can still do a great deal more. And we take home indications of work, directives. One of these is that is something we have to spread across the whole of the Italian system. This mindset. This is not often and always the case for practical reasons as well, because in small companies there are people that have to look after everything. They don't have the research, the skills, or even the mindsets to be able to move in this direction. And this is important, however, and there we should invite SMEs, small companies, to create new opportunities to take on different mindsets, not because small is ugly, but because future innovation requires a certain critical mass. And then the other thing is work with the institutions. We need the institutions to be swift acting, much swifter than they are now, or what they declare they are. We need the world around us to work and react very quickly. And we can't see time wasted without decisions being taken, without things becoming a reality. Another question is that of energy costs, and this is particularly applicable to Italy, but it also it links in with the theme of debureaucratization, the certainty in law, certainty in rules, and also of a greater ability to think differently in different sectors, and also to think about what the consequences are of implementing rules, not thinking of them abstractly, but think of them as applied to the world. We need Europe in the true sense of the word, not as 27 flanked nations, but as a continent which considers itself a continent because it is facing other continents, and therefore we have to be on the same size scale. We have to have the same ability to move together. I conclude with two things. The first, I think the sustainability is a collective commitment which concerns citizens, companies, and institutions, and doesn't just concern us, but again, doesn't just involve us today, but involves the future young generations, and looks and involves the whole world in which we live. So I'd like to thank the for impact, working in Africa and for Africa. I think this is fundamental. And I'd like to conclude with a word of thanks. Thanks to Letizia, San Patrignano, for hosting us, to all the young people from San Patrignano who worked with us. I'd like to thank the Confindustria staff who are always behind in the sidelines, and all those who have followed us today. Thank you. And I'd like to give the floor to Letizia Moratti for her conclusions. And I'd like to thank her, by the way, for allowing me to chair this session, which was so satisfying. Thank you very much for this very interesting day, which certainly enriched us all. What do we take home with us? The first thing is encouraging, I think. It has to do with our Italian entrepreneurial fabric. It's healthy, it's creative, it's able to innovate, it's flexible. And I think that in a very considerable panorama which is changing so rapidly, I think this is an advantage we have. What do we take home? We'll take home positive testimonies. We have had testimony of urban regeneration, very positive projects. I'm thinking of Lavazza's Nuvola di Borro of Ferragamo. I'm thinking of the commitment of Max Mara in its surrounding area, the digital farm of the reclamation in Ferrara, and also the Parma innovative housing plan, many initiatives which I think should become part and parcel of the whole system. Again, this is something that a message that we can take home, how we can in fact put these positive experiences to further use. I've heard about the hurdles, the difficulties, and the other thought is we have to intervene with courage to overcome these barriers, these hurdles, cultural obstacles, regulatory hurdles, everything that prevents us from upgrading all our potential and making use of all human and predatorial, national, Italian, and European potential. We touched on many, many topics. I recall also training, which is fundamental. And I was struck by the comparison that was made by the vice president of the young industrialists with regard to the growth of STEM skills in China, much better than the US and also ours. And this is a gap we have to fill. And we also linked to the fusion skills. We have to work on that as well. We also looked at the topic of energy. Unfortunately, Italy is the weak chain in the Europe, and therefore we need to have a single energy market. This is work that not only we in Italy but also Europe is called upon to work on, because we mustn't be squeezed between America, which is self-sufficient from an energy point of view, and China, which has opened up various markets and therefore has provisions as a result of these agreements, which means that it doesn't have the sort of energy dependency that we have. We touch on the theme of finance, which is a lever for competitiveness, and also we have the question of the innovation in various fields, which is the lever for forging forward. We haven't talked much generally about innovation in agriculture, but this we heard of this today. Our agriculture is looking deeply at the lever of farming and technology in farming. This is something which is very important, and we have concentrated on the tertiary sector, it was said, and we have drastically reduced the value in the primary and secondary sectors. And this was mentioned as well. And this is a warning. We can't have a first and a second sector which is diminished. We can't afford that. I come to the conclusions. We talked about Europe. What sort of Europe do we expect and want? We have heard from many quarters that we need more Europe. We need, however, a different Europe. We need a Europe which doesn't have confused rules, and too many of them. 13,000 norms in Europe as opposed to 3,000 in the US. Overlapping norms and standards. A study was carried out, but we know that there's an overlapping of rules and regulations, which creates a confusion that we talked about. And also, we have to have a more pragmatic Europe, has to be much more concrete, closer to the demands and requirements of citizens, companies, and workers. We've had a Europe, and we also said this today. We are all convinced that Europe is absolutely important. We must continue and try and reach the targets of the Green Deal, but we have targets without calculating that we need times, different time frames, and different instruments. And therefore, these are the 2 points where Europe must work to give businesses sufficient time frames to meet the objectives, and also be given the instruments, as in America with the Inflation Reduction Act. Europe must open up to other markets. The session on Africa was all important, in fact, and I said this morning that Europe isn't concerned sufficiently with Africa. It doesn't see it as an opportunity. We see it, unfortunately, almost as a continent which exports illegal immigration. This should not be the case, or the way we consider it, because not to have illegal immigration, we must invest in Africa, in skills and training in Africa, so that people can continue to live in Africa in a dignified way. Last point on Europe. We need a Europe which, in fact, places people in the center again. Because if a mistake has been made about Africa, it was the mistake of seeing the environment in an abstract form, without considering that man, the person, is at the center of the environment. Why have farmers being seen as enemies of the environment rather than seeing them as the custodians of the environment? Because people have not been put at the center of European policies. And this, I think, is the most worrying factor, because it's a change in culture that is needed. And it's, however, a factor which, if we consider this, and we ourselves continue to do this, as we have seen from these marvelous examples, if we ourselves go back to put man at the center, and we've seen this is possible. So I close this home, this house, everyday places at the center of activity, the person, the individual. Is a mentality of mutual aid, mutual help, giving everybody a second chance, an opportunity, the possibility of being able to see the potential, the good in everybody, and to accomplish every day small miracles. And I hope that the message of San Patrignani can be an experience that, in an experience that we've had today, can be of help to the daily activities of each one of you, because if we do this, we will continue to improve our society. I'd like to really thank Confindustria. In fact, I see that people were taking notes all day. I'd like to thank President Orsini, and thank you, Mr. Velasio, for this fantastic moderation of the sessions. And I'd like to thank my assistant for her great work, and all the people from San Patrignano who made this day really a great event, especially also the dinner last evening. Thank you all.